Hello, lovely people of the world, once again to you, and welcome back to Let's Play Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion. In the previous episode, we had some pretty rough luck. But in today's episode, it's time for something pretty big about this campaign. Stomp till you dromp. Drop the base station, defeat the boss. Bring it on! To pass this test, you must bring down a very tough enemy. Be sure to make good use of your weapon's range. If things get dicey, I recommend backing off and catching your breath. Back like I never left. Octo Stamp Redux. That's the Octo Stamp. I'm pretty sure Agent 3 took one of those down during the early days. Who cares about back in my day, Ada? So the thing who's boss. Yes, this is a rematch of a boss we've seen in Octo Canyon. That's basically going to be the theme of all the bosses we'll be facing throughout this campaign. These are even harder versions of bosses that we've seen over the course of our adventure. So, what you want to do, just like before, what you want to do is you want to wait for the face to start facing you, and then destroy the buckle, and then eventually we'll be able to destroy it. I gotta say, recording footage for the hero replica weapon levels, I'm kind of sick of seeing these guys. But they changed these levels just enough to make them interesting, like the fact that it's not going to fire bubbles at you, so it's not quite as easy as before to come on top of the boss. Now it has a couple more buckles on the side of it. Whoa, more touch panels! Okay, let's destroy that. Get out of the way! There we go. When it's phase plants like that, that's going to be the perfect opportunity to take care of the side buckles. So let's take care of that. I think they're supposed to be touch panels like Pro said a moment ago, but I'm just going to keep calling them buckles because that's what they look like to me. Alright. The squeezer probably isn't the best weapon to use in this level, but I just feel like using it because I feel like having an extra challenge. Because I usually go with the recommended weapon for this boss, and I just feel like having an extra challenge. And we haven't really seen the squeezers a whole lot during this Let's Play. And it's not necessarily one of my favorite weapons in the game, but it's one that I really like and would like to demonstrate at some point during this play, so that's what we're doing right now. What is that? Alright, so that strategy before of having it face planted then going for the side buckles, not gonna work anymore, but what will work instead is going down here and trying to have the face go off to the side so that you can safely take care of it from there. Now, unfortunately, this part is gonna be really difficult. Wow, there's a heavy splatting on top of it. I never noticed that before. But yeah, there's heavy splatting up there. It's not gonna make your life any easier. But, like, I didn't even notice it until today, so it's not like it's gonna be that much of a trouble. That much of a trouble, what? Okay, that was fine. This is fine. This is fine. I still like the face plant it makes in the ego whenever it does that attack. Alright, so your ink probably isn't going to do that much against the bubbles itself. They usually just make them shrink down, but it takes a lot of shots to actually make them disappear, so in the end it's not really all that worth it. I'm going to try to get back over this direction so that we'll be safe. Woohoo, that was scary. I still love the way this guy face plants into the ground. That would never not be funny. I'm glad this is the boss that returned. One thing that I kind of wish they did do was I kind of wish they made it so that the bosses from Octo Valley return as well. Like, it would have been really cool to have seen the one guy with the teeth rematched during this boss fight, during this campaign. But I still like what they did with this boss as well, because even though this is a boss we have seen plenty of times before, and definitely a lot more than usual if we played in hero replica weapons, like what I'm doing for this Let's Play. Even though we have seen this plenty of times before, they still offer something unique that makes them a little bit more challenging for those who have played through these encounters before. But now that we've taken care of that, the Octo Stamp is destroyed once again. You have now unlocked 10 lines. You can view them on the Deep Sea Metro map. Stations marked with the circliness contain one of the 4 things. Seek them out. I would like to offer you a reward for finding this new line. Please pay me a visit. And now we have all the mem cakes of line F. Isn't that exciting? I was saving this for a special occasion, and I believe you qualify. Alright, let's go talk to Iso Pedro real quick. The full set tells an interesting story, doesn't it? This is all like that we've seen before, and now we get the null armor replica. I was in darkness, and then you came along to be the sun rising over my horizon. Very poetic, buddy. So, before we do anything else, that's not the button I'm going to push. Before we do anything else, we can finally access line E. So, no longer not being alphabetical order or whatever you want over that. But now, you may notice, we technically now have access to all 4 thing locations. So, if we really want to, we can end the Let's Play now. We can go straight for those 4 things and just call quits and not look at anything else. But that's not what we're going to be doing. We did promise that we would 100% Octo Expansion, and that's just what we're going to be doing. But that's going to be it for this episode's portion of Octo Expansion, so I'm going to meet you guys in the imaginary land of alternate save file. Hello, lovely people of the world, Bounty here to you, and I already introduced myself in this episode. Earlier we were playing Octo Princess, so I don't know why I introduced myself again. Today we're playing Turf War. We haven't seen this in a while, but we'll be playing Turf War on the Black Belly Skate Park, and this is the final time we ever have to see this stupid stage ever again. It's so gorgeous! So, Black Belly Skate Park, I don't have a lot of fond memories of this one, but I gotta say, it's honestly very surprising that Turf War, of all things, was the last stage that we've seen for this, was the last mode that we've seen for this stage. So, yeah, that's pretty fun. But what's also pretty fun is the fact that we can now talk about the weapons this time around. There's the Gluga Dooleys and the Dooleys Culture. So that's pretty fun. I don't really personally use either of these weapons, so I don't have a lot of personal experience that I can talk about. But it is still pretty fun to talk about these because that's kind of the whole point of this Let's Play. I already promised earlier in the series that I'd talk about every single weapon, and we're almost there anyway, so I stop now. So, there are 3 versions of a Gluga Doolie. First of all, I'll probably explain how this works. So, a Gluga Doolie has a pretty long range, and it has very high damage. It has a pretty low firing rate, but the interesting thing about this one is that whenever you roll around, the damage and the range will actually increase. So that's something that's very well worth mentioning. It definitely will take some time to play around with this one for you to get used to how this one works, so definitely keep that in mind. But from what I've heard, it is pretty worth it. Like I said earlier, I don't have a lot of experience playing this one myself, but it does seem like a pretty powerful weapon. So there are two versions of the Gluggo Dooleys. The first one is the traditional Gluggo Doolie, which comes with an ink mine and an inkjet on level 17. This one's pretty interesting because this is the only main weapon in the entirety of Octo Expansion that doesn't actually appear at the time that Octo Expansion was released. The only time that a Gluggo Doolie actually appears is a canned weapon that appeared once during Ink from Above Station. If I knew about that back then when we recorded that level, I would have mentioned it, but it kind of didn't happen. But, whatever. C'est la vie. I've been saying c'est la vie a lot in past recording sessions. But I mean, there is another Gluggo Doolie that I'd like to talk about. This one comes with, this is the Gluggo Doolie Deco. It's probably important to mention the name of it first. This one is the Gluggo Doolie Deco, comes with Splash Wall and a Baller on level 24. And we're almost at the end of the match, so let's see if we can triumph over the evilness that is James's face. Oh, he's gonna slap me when he sees this video. Like, okay, so a bit of a fun story. I know I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but I've been accepted into the Disney College program, and something that's kind of fun is that James and I have been jokingly talking about going to Disney World together because we're both going to be living fairly close to one another. It would actually be cool if that can actually happen, but I'm not entirely sure if it will because I would be working most days. But anyway, the whole point of that story was that something kind of funny to think about is that James keeps saying that he wants to slap me, and I'm actually kind of nervous about meeting him in person because of that. And we lost. How sad. How tragic. It's more tragic than Romeo and Juliet. Actually, that reminds me of something funny. So a couple days ago, my family and I were watching the Romeo and Juliet movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's an okay movie. The editing in it is very, very late 90s, but it's a pretty decent movie. But something kind of funny is whenever you're watching a movie and you're like, oh, hey, it's that actor. Yeah, one of the actors in that movie plays Ant-Man in The Avengers and Bobby Newport in Parks and Recreation. So that's something that's pretty fun. It's like, hey, I know that actor. That's pretty amusing. Right then. So, yeah, enough about that, because now we're talking about the next line of weapons, the Dooleys Cultures. So, this one is pretty interesting. If I wasn't such a big fan of the Tetra Dooleys, this is probably the one that I'd go with. Either that or traditional Splat Dooleys. I can never really pick whichever one's my favorite. But the Dooleys Cultures, did I call them Dooleys? Whatever. They're called Dooleys Cultures. That's their official name, and yeah. The interesting thing about them is that they have the longest range out of any Doolie weapon in the game. And not just that, but their rolling effect actually works a little bit differently than a traditional Doolie. So most Dooleys, how they roll around is you just press a button. Most of them are limited to only 2 rolls before you have to stay in place for a moment. So you definitely don't want to mash the button too much, otherwise people will be able to pick up on your patterns and will be able to figure out your strategies and things like that. See the strategy that I'm doing, and it's kind of evil. Yeah, that's a pretty effective strategy you can do. It's pretty evil and not very nice, but it is pretty effective at times. But anyway, yeah, Dooleys Cultures. Going back to the rolling effects for Dooleys in this game, whenever using a rolling ability, what usually happens is that you roll and then you stay in place. Unless you press the button again, but most Dooleys are limited to 2 rolls at a time. So, this one works a bit differently, because when you roll around, you can slide a little bit. So, you're not staying in place, you do roll, and your mobility is still pretty slow, but you can pick up and start moving pretty quickly right after rolling. So, anybody out there who loves Super Smash Bros. Melee, this is the closest thing you'll ever get to a wave dash. That's what I thought when I first read that. When I first read that you can slide around, that was my first thought. I was like, oh, it's like a wave dash. But anyway, there are 2 versions of Dooleys Cultures. There's a traditional one, which comes with a point sensor and a Tentum missile, unlocked at level 12, and the custom Dooleys Cultures comes with a Splat Bomb and an Ink Storm, unlocked at level 16. This one's pretty interesting, though, because custom Dooleys Cultures were shown off in a Nintendo Direct, and in the footage for that Direct, it was shown to have a stingray as the special weapon rather than an inkstorm, but data miners soon after that direct went live found that it had already changed to an inkstorm. So that footage must have been recorded before they changed that. And it's pretty interesting because I always want to know exactly what time the footage for these games are recorded, because like in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's DLC direct things, whenever Master Sakurai is talking about the characters during his presentations, he usually talks about when they're recorded, and I always really love that because it's like, oh, this is what the game looked like a few months ago, and this is what it looks like now. That's pretty fun. I really do love those presentations that Sakurai does. It's always very fun because you get like a nice little history lesson with the characters if you're unfamiliar with them. Like that's kind of the big reason, that's kind of what got me excited about Terry, because I wasn't really excited for him at first, but then it was like, oh wow, this character's actually been around for a very long time. That's pretty cool. Like, Terry was the least excited I was for a DLC character, but then after I started playing as him, it quickly became one of my favorites, and Terry in general is also a really fun character. Personally speaking, how I'd rank the Fighter Pass 1 characters, I'd rank them as Joker number 1, Byleth number 2 as a very close second, Banjo-Kazooie 3rd, Terry 4th, and Hero last. I have a friend who, I think he watches these videos sometimes. I have a friend who, from my college, who loves Dragon Quest, so I do apologize if you're watching this video. You just heard me badmouth Dragon Quest. It's just that I don't have good memories of playing against Hero online. I've already told the story of playing against a bunch of heroes, and they all killed me with his whack ability, and then playing as Isabelle, and she kills me with a pocketed whack. So yeah, that wasn't very nice. So the match is going to be coming to an end pretty soon, I think. Maybe. Sort of. Kind of. We have 30 seconds left, so maybe we'll be able to triumph overall. We've taken the lead. Can we maintain it? I already know what happens because I've already seen this footage, but will we be able to triumph over the evilness that is James's face? Oh no, the barrier is back up. Whatever's gonna happen? Oh no, we lost the lead! How tragic! But yeah, that's all the weapons we're talking about in today's video. And we only have one more dually left to talk about. And oh man, this one's gonna be a pretty fun one. So, that's going to be it for this episode of Splatoon 2 Octo Expansion. So thank you all so much for watching this episode, and until next time, let's get rid of you. Oh yeah.